The security guard's hand closed around Melissa Lahey's arm with enough force to leave marks, and she felt the blood drain from her face as every conversation in the Grand Meridian Hotel's opulent lobby stuttered to a halt. "I said you need to leave." His voice carried across the marble expanse, bouncing off the crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls above them. "This is a private event." Melissa's fingers tightened around the cream-colored invitation in her other hand, the embossed lettering digging into her palm. Her college roommate's wedding invitation. The same roommate who had begged her to be there, who had sent 3 reminder texts that morning, who had once sworn they would be friends forever. "I have an invitation," Melissa said, keeping her voice steady even as heat crawled up her neck. She could feel the stares multiplying, wedding guests in their designer gowns and tailored suits turning to watch the spectacle. "Jennifer Morrison invited me. We went to Stanford together." The guard's expression didn't change. His pale face remained impassive, almost bored, as if this happened every day. Maybe it did. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. We've had complaints." "Complaints," the word came out sharper than she intended. "I just walked in." "Your presence is making the other guests uncomfortable." He tugged at her arm, trying to steer her toward the exit. Melissa planted her feet, her heels clicking against the floor. She had spent 2 months' rent on the navy dress she wore, had her hair done that morning in an elegant updo, had even splurged on new shoes because she wanted to look good for Jennifer's big day. Because despite the distance that had grown between them since graduation, despite the unanswered calls and the canceled plans, she had thought their friendship still meant something. "Let go of me," she pulled against his grip. "I'm not leaving until I speak to Jennifer." The bride doesn't want to be disturbed by this situation. This situation. As if Melissa herself was a problem to be solved, a stain to be removed before it spread. A woman in a silver gown leaned toward her companion, her whisper carrying in the sudden quiet. "I can't believe they let someone like that in here. This is supposed to be exclusive." Someone like that. The words hit like a slap, sharp and stinging. Melissa's free hand trembled as she raised the invitation higher. "Call Jennifer, please. There's been a mistake." "There's no mistake." A new voice cut through the tension, high and cold. "I asked security to escort you out." Jennifer Morrison descended the curved staircase like a vision in white lace and silk, her blonde hair swept into an elaborate style, her makeup flawless. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, beautiful and untouchable. Behind her, bridesmaids in matching rose-colored dresses clustered together, their faces a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Melissa felt something crack inside her chest. "Jen." "Don't call me that." Jennifer's blue eyes were ice chips, hard and unforgiving. "We're not in college anymore, Melissa. This is my wedding day, my perfect wedding day, and I can't have you here ruining it." "Ruining it? I don't understand. You invited me." Melissa held up the invitation, her proof, her evidence that she belonged here. "You sent this to my apartment. You wrote a note on it telling me how much you wanted me here." "That was before." Jennifer stopped 3 steps from the bottom, maintaining the high ground. "Before my future mother-in-law saw the guest list, before I realized what kind of impression it would make to have you here. Blake's family is very traditional, very particular about appearances." "Particular about appearances," Melissa repeated slowly, the meaning sinking in like stones in water. "You mean particular about skin color." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Jennifer's perfectly made-up face flushed pink. "Don't make this about race," Jennifer hissed, descending the final steps. "This is about fitting in, about understanding social dynamics. The Harrington family has certain expectations, and I need to meet them. Surely you can understand that. Surely you can be mature enough to step aside for one day." "Mature enough?" Melissa's voice rose despite her best efforts to control it. "You want me to be mature about being thrown out of your wedding because I'm black?" "Keep your voice down." Jennifer glanced around nervously, as if worried about who might be listening, might be judging. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene," Melissa laughed, the sound bitter and raw. "You're having me physically removed from a wedding you invited me to, and I'm the one making a scene." The security guard tightened his grip, and Melissa winced. She thought about fighting, about demanding to stay, about calling the police or making a formal complaint or doing any of the dozen things that her rational mind suggested. But she could see it in Jennifer's face, in the faces of all the guests watching with varying degrees of discomfort and satisfaction. She wasn't wanted here. She had never been wanted here. "I thought we were friends," Melissa said quietly, and she hated how small her voice sounded, how hurt. "I thought I mattered to you." "We were friends," Jennifer agreed, and for just a moment, something that might have been regret flickered across her features. "But people change. Situations change. I'm starting a new life with Blake, and that life doesn't have room for complications." Complications. That's what their 4 years of friendship had been reduced to, a complication. "Let me give you some advice," Jennifer continued, stepping closer and lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Stop trying to fit into places you don't belong. Stop pretending you're something you're not. You'll be happier if you just accept your place and stay there." The security guard pulled harder, and this time Melissa didn't resist. She let herself be led across the marble floor, past the ornate flower arrangements that probably cost more than her car, past the ice sculpture of 2 swans forming a heart, past the guests who watched with expressions ranging from pity to satisfaction. At the door, she turned back one last time. Jennifer had already moved on, was already greeting other guests with air kisses and practiced smiles, was already pretending that nothing had happened, that Melissa Lahey had never existed at all. The summer air outside hit her like a wall, hot and humid and suffocating. The security guard released her arm without a word, turned, and walked back inside, leaving her standing alone on the sidewalk in her expensive dress and new shoes that suddenly felt ridiculous, like a costume she had no right to wear. Melissa walked. She didn't know where she was going, didn't care. She just walked, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall where anyone might see them. The city moved around her in a blur of colors and sounds, indifferent to her pain. She found herself in a small park blocks away from the hotel, finally letting the tears come as she sank onto a bench beneath a maple tree. Her phone buzzed in her clutch, and she pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from her mother asking how the wedding was going. Another from her younger sister wanting to see pictures of the bride. What would she tell them? How could she explain that her friend, her supposedly best friend, had thrown her out like garbage? That she had stood there and let it happen because fighting would have only made it worse, would have only confirmed every ugly stereotype that Jennifer's in-laws already believed. "Excuse me, are you all right?" Melissa looked up, hastily wiping at her face. A man stood a few feet away, concern evident in his dark eyes. He was Asian, Korean maybe, dressed in an expensive-looking suit that somehow managed to look casual on him. His black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and he held a coffee cup in one hand. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice thick with tears. "Just having a moment." He didn't leave, which surprised her. Instead, he gestured to the other end of the bench. "May I?" She shrugged, too tired to care. He sat, maintaining a respectful distance, and they shared the silence for a moment. The park was quiet, just the rustle of leaves and distant traffic. "I find that people who are just having a moment in parks while wearing formal attire are usually not fine," he said gently. "But I understand if you don't want to talk about it." "Smart observation." Melissa managed a watery smile. "Let me guess, therapist." "Businessman, but I've had my share of park bench moments." He paused. "I'm Junwoo, Park Junwoo." "Melissa Lahey." They shook hands formally, absurdly, and something about the normalcy of the gesture made her throat tight again. "Would it help to talk about it?" Junwoo asked. "I'm a good listener." "And a complete stranger, which sometimes makes it easier." Melissa considered refusing, considered standing up and walking away and never thinking about this day again. But the words came anyway, spilling out in a rush. She told him about the wedding, about Jennifer, about standing in that hotel lobby while everyone stared and judged and found her wanting. She told him about the invitation that had seemed like an olive branch, a chance to reconnect, that had turned into a trap. Junwoo listened without interrupting. his expression growing darker as she spoke. "Your friend is a coward," he said finally, "and the people at that hotel are fools." "She's not my friend anymore." The words hurt to say out loud made it real. "I don't think she ever really was." "Then she doesn't deserve you." Junwoo's voice was firm, certain. "Anyone who would treat another person that way, who would value social status over basic human decency, isn't worth your tears." "Easy to say," Melissa said. "Harder to believe." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "I know what it's like to be judged before you even open your mouth, to have people make assumptions about who you are and what you're worth based on how you look or where you come from." Melissa studied his face, seeing the sincerity there. "Your accent is slight, but it's there. You weren't born here." "Seoul, I came to the States for university and stayed." He smiled slightly. "My family wasn't pleased. They had plans for me. Expected me to take over the family business, marry someone they chose, live the life they had mapped out. When I refused, when I chose my own path, they weren't kind about it." "Did you regret it?" "Sometimes, but mostly I learned that the people who truly matter, who truly love you, will support your choices even when they don't understand them. Everyone else is just noise." They sat together as the afternoon faded into evening, talking about families and expectations, about the weight of other people's prejudices, and the exhaustion of constantly proving yourself worthy of basic respect. Junwoo had a quiet strength about him, a steadiness that Melissa found comforting. He didn't try to fix her problems or tell her that everything happened for a reason or offer any of the empty platitudes people usually did. He just listened and understood. When she finally stood to leave, he stood with her. "Thank you," she said, "for sitting with me, for listening. Would you like to get dinner sometime?" The question came out of nowhere, catching her off guard. "I promise it will be at a place where you're welcomed and appreciated." Melissa hesitated. After the day she'd had, the idea of putting herself out there again, of risking more rejection, seemed unbearable. But something in Junwoo's expression, in the genuine warmth of his smile, made her consider it. "Just dinner," he added. "No pressure, just two people who understand what it's like to fight for their place in the world." "Okay," she heard herself say, "just dinner." They exchanged numbers, and Junwoo waited with her until her cab arrived, his presence a quiet comfort against the chaos of the day. As the car pulled away, Melissa watched him in the rearview mirror, standing beneath the maple tree where they'd met, and felt something shift inside her. Not hope exactly, but maybe the possibility of it. That dinner turned into another, and then another. Junwoo courted her with a quiet intensity that took her breath away, showing up at her office with coffee, taking her to hole-in-the-wall restaurants that served incredible food, listening to her talk about her work in sustainable architecture with genuine interest. He told her about his company, a tech startup that had grown beyond his wildest expectations, about the challenges of building something from nothing while fighting against people's assumptions at every turn. 3 months after they met, he took her to an art gallery opening and introduced her to a friend who needed an architect for a new community center project. 6 months after that, she moved into his apartment overlooking the river. A year later, he proposed in that same park where they'd first met, beneath the maple tree that had witnessed the worst day of her life transforming into the beginning of something beautiful. They married quietly, just family and close friends, in a ceremony that celebrated both of their heritages. Her mother cried happy tears. His parents, who had flown in from Seoul, welcomed her with surprising warmth once they understood that Junwoo had chosen someone who matched his strength and vision. Life was good, better than good. Melissa's career flourished, her designs winning awards and recognition. Junwoo's company went from success to success, expanding into new markets, becoming a name people recognized. They built a life together filled with love and laughter and mutual support. And then, 5 years after that terrible day at the Grand Meridian Hotel, Melissa found herself standing in the lobby of that same hotel, Junwoo's hand warm and solid in hers, and she felt the past collide with the present in a way that stole her breath. The hotel looked the same crystal chandeliers, the same marble floors, the same ornate flower arrangements. Even the ice sculpture was similar, though this time it depicted a castle instead of swans. The lobby buzzed with activity, guests arriving for what the discreet signs indicated was the Morrison Harrington 5th anniversary celebration. "We can leave," Junwoo said quietly, reading her tension. "We don't have to be here." "No," Melissa squared her shoulders. "We're here for business. Your company is acquiring Harrington Industries. This meeting is important." "Not more important than you." His grip on her hand tightened. "Say the word and we walk out. I'll conduct the negotiations somewhere else." She loved him for that, for always putting her first. But she was done running from her past, done letting other people's cruelty dictate her choices. "I'm fine," she said, and this time she meant it. "Let's go." They walked across the lobby together, and Melissa noticed the glances they attracted. But these weren't the hostile stares of 5 years ago. These were appreciative looks, envious looks, people nodding Junwoo's obvious wealth and power, nodding Melissa's designer dress, and the way she carried herself with confidence earned through hard-won battles. The ballroom was already filling with people, a networking event before the main celebration dinner. Melissa recognized several faces from the business world, CEOs and entrepreneurs she'd worked with or met at various functions. Junwoo was immediately approached by several people wanting to discuss the Harrington deal, and Melissa drifted toward the refreshment table, content to let him handle the initial schmoozing. Melissa Lahey." She turned, champagne glass halfway to her lips, and found herself face to face with one of Jennifer's bridesmaids from that wedding 5 years ago. The woman looked older, tired around the eyes, but her smile seemed genuine. "Sarah Chen, right?" Melissa said, placing the face. "You were in Jennifer's sorority." "I'm surprised you remember," Sarah laughed nervously. "I'm surprised you're here, actually. After what happened at the wedding, I thought we'd never see you again." "Life takes unexpected turns." Melissa kept her voice neutral. "That was such a horrible day," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "I felt terrible about it, but I didn't know what to say, how to help. I should have said something. I should have stood up for you." The apology surprised Melissa. "Why didn't you?" "Honestly, I was scared. Jennifer was in such a state about everything being perfect, and Blake's mother was being so demanding, and I didn't want to rock the boat. But that's not an excuse. What they did to you was wrong, and I should have had the courage to say so." Before Melissa could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Jennifer Morrison Harrington swept into the room like a queen holding court, blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Blake Harrington followed behind her, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his tuxedo, already loosening his bow tie. Jennifer's eyes scanned the room, her smile fixed and practiced, until they landed on Melissa. The smile froze, then shattered. Her face went white, then red, cycling through emotions too quickly to track. "What is she doing here?" The words carried across the ballroom, cutting through conversations. "Someone call security, now." The room went quiet, all eyes turning to watch the drama unfold. It was the wedding all over again, except this time Melissa didn't feel small or ashamed. This time she had Junwoo at her side, his presence a solid reminder that she belonged anywhere she chose to be. Junwoo materialized next to her, his hand finding the small of her back. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, there's a problem," Jennifer said, striding toward them with Blake trailing behind. "This woman needs to leave. She wasn't invited. She has no right to be here." "Actually, she has every right." Junwoo's voice was calm, professional, but with an edge that made several people nearby take a step back. "Melissa is my wife, and as the owner of Park Technologies, currently in negotiations to acquire Harrington Industries, I'd say we both have a right to be anywhere we choose." The silence was absolute. Melissa watched Jennifer's face process this information, saw the moment understanding dawned, saw the calculations happening behind those ice-blue eyes. "Your wife," Jennifer's voice came out strangled. "You're married to Park Junwoo." "For 3 years now," Melissa confirmed, enjoying the way Jennifer's perfect composure cracked. "Surprised." Blake Harrington stepped forward, extending his hand to Junwoo with an obsequious smile. Mr. Park, what an honor. I had no idea your wife was an old friend of Jennifer's. This is wonderful. We should all have dinner together, catch up. We're not friends, Melissa said clearly. We were never really friends. Jennifer's face flushed darker. That's not fair. We were close in college, you know we were. Were we? Melissa tilted her head. Friends don't throw friends out of their weddings because of the color of their skin. Friends don't call their friends complications. Friends don't ask security to physically remove friends from their lives. It wasn't like that, Jennifer protested weakly. You're twisting things. I was under a lot of pressure from Blake's family. I made a mistake. You made a choice, Melissa corrected, and that choice showed me exactly who you are. People were listening now, really listening, the crowd pressing closer to hear every word. Blake looked increasingly panicked, clearly understanding that whatever his wife had done years ago was now threatening his company's acquisition. Sweetheart, maybe we should discuss this privately, Blake said to Jennifer, his tone placating. Mr. Park, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. My wife sometimes gets overwhelmed with social events. I'm certain she didn't mean any offense. She meant every word, Melissa said. She told me to know my place, to stop pretending I was something I wasn't, to accept that I didn't belong in spaces like this. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several people pulled out phones, no doubt already texting or recording. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. Jennifer's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You have no idea what it was like. Blake's mother was horrible to me. She had all these expectations, all these rules about who was acceptable and who wasn't. She would have made my life hell if I'd pushed back. So you made my life hell instead, Melissa said softly. You chose the easy path, the cowardly path. I was protecting my marriage. You were protecting your social standing, Melissa countered. You chose status over integrity, comfort over courage, and you know what? I'm glad you did, because it showed me the truth about you before I wasted any more time believing we were friends. Junwoo's hand pressed gently against her back, a silent question. She nodded slightly. They had said enough. The acquisition negotiations will continue as planned, Junwoo announced to the room at large. Harrington Industries is a sound investment regardless of the personal failings of the Harrington family. However, I want to make one thing absolutely clear to everyone here. My wife is Melissa Park, one of the most talented architects in this city, a woman of incredible strength and integrity. Anyone who disrespects her, for any reason, will find themselves on the wrong side of both my personal and professional displeasure. He guided Melissa toward the exit, and the crowd parted for them like water. As they walked past Jennifer, Melissa paused. I hope your marriage is everything you sacrificed your integrity for, she said quietly. I hope it was worth it. Jennifer opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, her perfect facade crumbling under the weight of her own choices. Outside, Melissa breathed in the cool evening air, feeling lighter than she had in years. The ghosts of that terrible day had been exorcised, the wounds finally able to heal. Are you okay? Junwoo asked, pulling her close. I'm perfect, she said and meant it. Thank you for having my back. Always, he kissed her forehead. Though I have to admit, I'm impressed by your restraint. I was ready to cancel the entire acquisition just to make a point. That would have hurt a lot of innocent employees. Melissa smiled. Besides, living well is the best revenge, and we live very well. They walked to their car, Junwoo's driver waiting patiently. As they settled into the back seat, Melissa's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Chen. That was incredibly brave. I'm sorry I wasn't brave 5 years ago. If you ever want to get coffee and talk, I'd like that. No pressure. Sarah. Melissa stared at the message for a moment, then showed it to Junwoo. What do you think? She asked. I think forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not the person who wronged you, he said thoughtfully. If coffee with Sarah would bring you peace, do it. If it would just reopen wounds, don't. Either way, I support you. She typed back a simple response. Maybe, let me think about it. The car pulled away from the hotel, and Melissa watched it recede in the side mirror. The Grand Meridian, site of her humiliation and, years later, her triumph. She had walked out of that building twice now. The first time broken, the second time whole. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Home," Junwoo said, then glanced at Melissa. "Unless you want to go somewhere else, celebrate your victory." "Home sounds perfect." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "I have everything I need right here." But the story wasn't quite over yet. The following week, Melissa found herself back at Park Technologies headquarters, reviewing the final details of the Harrington acquisition with Junwoo's team. The deal was solid, beneficial for both companies, and would create hundreds of new jobs. Blake Harrington arrived for the signing meeting looking haggard, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Jennifer wasn't with him. "Mr. Park, Mrs. Park, thank you for agreeing to continue with the negotiations," Blake said as they settled into the conference room. "I understand if you have reservations given the personal history between our families." "Business is business," Junwoo said coolly. "My feelings about your wife's behavior don't impact the financial soundness of this acquisition." Blake winced. "About that, I owe you both an apology. I knew what Jennifer did at our wedding. She told me about it that night, laughing about how she'd handled a potentially awkward situation. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I should have. I should have understood what it meant about her character, about my own character for accepting it." "Why are you telling us this now?" Melissa asked. "Because Jennifer and I are separating." Blake's hands shook slightly as he straightened his papers. The incident at the anniversary party was just the final straw in a long series of realizations about who I married and who I became trying to please her and my family. I'm done living that way. I'm done being the kind of person who stands by while someone is treated cruelly. Melissa studied him, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. She found only exhaustion and what looked like genuine shame. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Blake continued. "I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that your confrontation with Jennifer made me look at myself in the mirror and not like what I saw. So thank you, I guess, for having the courage to speak truth even when it was uncomfortable." The meeting proceeded efficiently after that, contracts signed, hands shaken, the acquisition official. As Blake prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. "For what it's worth, Jennifer is miserable," he said. "The video of your confrontation went viral. Her social circle has dropped her. My mother is furious that she's embarrassed the family name. She's losing everything she valued about her life." "And you think I should feel sorry for her?" Melissa asked. "No, I think I should feel sorry for her, and I don't. That's what scares me. I think I'm just relieved to have an excuse to leave." Blake shook his head. "She made her choices. We both did. Now we get to live with them." After he left, Melissa stood at the window of Junwoo's office, looking out over the city. Junwoo came to stand beside her, slipping his arm around her waist. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Honestly, I feel sad. Not for Jennifer exactly, but for who we could have been if she'd chosen differently, if she'd had the courage to be the friend I thought she was." Melissa leaned her head against his shoulder. "But mostly, I feel grateful. Grateful that her cruelty led me to that park bench where I met you. Grateful that her rejection forced me to build my own life instead of trying to fit into someone else's." "Everything happens for a reason." Junwoo's tone was gently teasing. "No, sometimes terrible things just happen, and we have to decide how to respond to them. We have to choose whether to let them break us or make us stronger." She turned to face him. "Jennifer's cruelty could have destroyed me. Instead, it led me to you. That's not fate or destiny. That's just me choosing to keep going, to keep believing I was worthy of love and respect even when someone I trusted told me otherwise." "You are worthy," Junwoo said firmly. "You've always been worthy. Jennifer's inability to see that says everything about her and nothing about you." They stood together as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Melissa thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, standing humiliated in a hotel lobby. She thought about the woman she'd become, strong and successful and loved. The journey between those two versions of herself had been painful, but necessary. A month later, Melissa received a letter, handwritten, on expensive stationery, forwarded from her old apartment. She recognized Jennifer's handwriting immediately. "Dear Melissa," it began, "I know I have no right to contact you. I know nothing I say can undo the hurt I caused, but I need you to understand that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The letter went on for pages, detailing Jennifer's regrets, her excuses, her explanations. She wrote about the pressure from Blake's family, about her own insecurities, about how she'd convinced herself that social climbing was more important than integrity. She wrote about watching the video of their confrontation go viral, about seeing herself through other people's eyes, and being horrified by what she'd become. "I don't expect forgiveness," the letter concluded. "I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I chose status over friendship. I chose comfort over courage. And I've spent every day since that anniversary party paying for those choices. I hope you're happy. I hope you have everything you deserve, everything I was too blind to see you were worthy of. I hope someday I can look at myself in the mirror and not see a coward. Love always, Jennifer." Melissa read the letter twice, then set it aside. Junwoo found her later, sitting in their home office, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" he asked. She handed him the letter. He read it in silence, his expression unreadable. "Are you going to respond?" he asked finally. "I don't know." Melissa stood, moving to the window. They lived in a penthouse now, the city spread out below them like a living tapestry. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to tell her that her apology is too little, too late. Part of me wants to forgive her and move on. "And what does your heart say?" "My heart says that forgiveness isn't about her. It's about me letting go of the anger and hurt so they don't poison my life." Melissa turned to face him. "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I can forgive her for what she did and still choose not to have her in my life." "That sounds wise." Junwoo pulled her into his arms. "Whatever you decide, I support you." In the end, Melissa wrote back. A brief note, carefully worded. "Jennifer, I accept your apology. I understand that you were under pressure and made choices you now regret. But understanding isn't the same as forgetting, and forgiveness isn't the same as trust. I hope you find peace with yourself and the courage to be better in the future. But I don't want you in my life. That door is closed. Take care of yourself. Melissa." She mailed it and felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The past was finally, truly past. 6 months later, Melissa stood in front of a crowd of journalists and industry professionals, accepting an award for her latest architectural project, a community center in an underserved neighborhood that had been featured in national publications for its innovative design and commitment to accessibility. "This project means everything to me," she said into the microphone, her voice steady and strong. "Because it represents what architecture should be about. Creating spaces where everyone, regardless of race or class or background, feels welcomed and valued. Creating spaces that affirm people's dignity and worth." She saw Junwoo in the front row, beaming with pride, and smiled. "I've learned that the spaces we create, both physical and social, reflect our values. They show what we believe about who matters and who belongs. 5 years ago, someone tried to tell me I didn't belong in certain spaces, that I should accept my place and stay there. Instead, I chose to create new spaces, better spaces, spaces built on respect and inclusion and the radical idea that everyone deserves dignity." The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, she was surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her, to discuss potential collaborations, to share their own stories of overcoming prejudice and discrimination. A young Black woman, probably in her early 20s, waited patiently until the crowd thinned before approaching. "Mrs. Park, I'm sorry to bother you, but I had to tell you how much your work means to me. I'm studying architecture at Howard, and seeing someone who looks like me achieving what you've achieved, it gives me hope." Melissa felt her throat tighten. "What's your name?" "Destiny Williams." "Destiny, can I give you some advice?" Melissa waited for the young woman's nod. "There will be people who try to tell you that you don't belong, that you're not good enough, not the right fit, not what they're looking for. They're wrong. Don't let anyone else define your worth or limit your potential. Build the life you deserve, create the spaces you want to see in the world, and never, Ever let someone else's prejudice make you small? Destiny's eyes shimmered with tears. Thank you, that means everything. They exchanged contact information, and Melissa made a mental note to check in with her, maybe offer mentorship or internship opportunities, paying forward the support she'd received from others who'd believed in her. That night, curled up next to Junwoo in their bed, Melissa reflected on how far she'd come. From that humiliating day at the Grand Meridian Hotel to this moment, accepting awards and inspiring the next generation. The journey had been painful, but it had also been worth it. What are you thinking about? Junwoo asked sleepily. Jennifer sent me a friend request on social media today, Melissa said. Third one this month. Are you going to accept it? No, she was quiet for a moment. I saw her profile, though. She looks different. Sadder. Her bio says she's a life coach now, specializing in helping women overcome their own internalized prejudices and find authentic connections. Ironic. Maybe, or maybe she really has changed. Maybe losing everything forced her to examine herself the way my confrontation with her forced Blake to examine himself. Melissa shrugged. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. She's not my responsibility. You're remarkably gracious about it. I'm remarkably free of it, Melissa corrected. That's what forgiveness did for me. It let me put down the weight of that anger and hurt and move forward. But moving forward doesn't mean going back. Junwoo kissed her forehead. I love you. Have I mentioned that today? Only about a dozen times, but I never get tired of hearing it. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, two people who'd found their way to each other through pain and prejudice, and had chosen to build something beautiful together. A year later, Melissa gave birth to twin daughters. She and Junwoo named them Grace and Hope, a reminder of the gifts that had carried them through the darkest times. As she held her daughters for the first time, Melissa thought about the world they would grow up in, the challenges they would face as biracial children in a society that often demanded people fit into neat boxes. We're going to teach them to be strong, she whispered to Junwoo as they watched their daughters sleep. To know their worth, to never let anyone make them feel less than. We're going to teach them by example, Junwoo agreed. By showing them what it looks like to face adversity with grace and courage, by building a life that reflects our values. And they did. As Grace and Hope grew, they heard the story of how their parents met. Sanitized for young ears, but with the essential truth intact. They learned that their mother had faced cruelty and chosen resilience, that their father had built an empire through hard work and integrity, that love and respect were more valuable than any amount of social status or wealth. On their daughter's 5th birthday, Melissa received an unexpected package. Inside was a children's book, professionally illustrated and bound. The dedication read, "To Grace and Hope, may you always know your worth," from someone who learned too late how precious true friendship is. It was from Jennifer. The book told the story of two friends who grew apart because one chose to value the wrong things, and how she spent years learning to be better, to be worthy of friendship again. It was surprisingly well written, genuinely moving in its honesty about failure and growth. Melissa set the book aside, unsure what to do with it. Junwoo found her later, holding the book and staring at nothing. She sent a book for the girls, Melissa explained. It's actually good, thoughtful. It teaches real lessons about integrity and courage and choosing friendship over status. What are you going to do with it? I think I'm going to keep it, Melissa said slowly. Not because I'm ready to reconnect with Jennifer, not because I think she's earned her way back into my life, but because her journey from who she was to who she's trying to become is a story worth telling. Because teaching our daughters about growth and change and the possibility of redemption is important. She looked at Junwoo. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. He pulled her close. You're making room for complexity, acknowledging that people can change while also maintaining your boundaries. That's wisdom. Over the next few years, Melissa occasionally saw updates about Jennifer through mutual acquaintances and social media. She had divorced Blake, moved to a different city, and was working with nonprofit organizations focused on racial justice and inclusion. She spoke at events about her own journey from perpetuating harm to actively working against it. They never reconnected. Melissa never accepted those friend requests, never reached out to bridge the gap between them. But she did read the books Jennifer wrote, each one exploring different aspects of prejudice and privilege and the hard work of becoming better. She saw Jennifer interviewed on podcasts, speaking honestly about her failures and the ongoing work of growth. "Do you think she's really changed?" Grace asked when she was old enough to understand the full story, around 12 years old. "Or is it all for show?" Melissa considered the question carefully. "I think change is possible for anyone who's willing to do the work. Whether Jennifer has truly changed or is just performing change, I don't know. But I know that I've changed. I'm stronger now, wiser, more confident in my worth. And that change came partly because of what she did to me." "So you're grateful to her?" Hope looked skeptical. "I'm grateful for the journey her cruelty sent me on," Melissa clarified. "I'm grateful for the lessons I learned, the strength I developed, the life I built. But I'm not grateful to her specifically. She doesn't get credit for my resilience. That belongs to me and to your father and to all the people who supported me when I needed it." "That makes sense," Grace said thoughtfully. "You can take something good from a bad situation without pretending the bad situation was good." "Exactly." Melissa hugged both her daughters. "Remember that. When people hurt you, and they will because humans are complicated and messy, you get to decide what lessons you take from that hurt. You get to decide whether to let it make you bitter or better. But you never have to forgive people who aren't sorry, and forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back into your life." Years passed. Melissa's architectural firm grew into one of the most respected in the country, known for its commitment to inclusive design and community engagement. Junwoo's company continued to expand, maintaining its reputation for ethical business practices and employee care. They raised their daughters to be confident, compassionate, aware of the challenges they would face, but not limited by them. On the 20th anniversary of that terrible day at the Grand Meridian Hotel, Melissa found herself back in that lobby once more. Not for a confrontation this time, but for a celebration. Her firm had been hired to redesign the hotel's conference spaces to be more accessible and welcoming, and the grand opening was tonight. She stood in the same spot where the security guard had grabbed her arm, where Jennifer had told her to know her place. So much had changed. Everything had changed. "Mom, are you okay?" Hope asked, coming to stand beside her. At 17, she was already showing signs of following her mother into architecture, her sketchbook always full of building designs and urban planning concepts. "I'm perfect," Melissa said and meant it. "Just remembering." Grace joined them, always more interested in the business side of things, already planning to study finance and join her father's company. "This place has bad memories for you, right? The hotel where that lady was horrible to you." "It had bad memories," Melissa corrected. "Now it has new ones, better ones. We transformed this space from a place of exclusion to a place of inclusion. That feels right." Junwoo appeared with champagne for him and Melissa, sparkling cider for the girls. "A toast," he proposed, "to transformation, to taking spaces that were once hostile and making them welcoming, to proving that we belong anywhere we choose to be." They clinked glasses, and Melissa felt the weight of the past finally, completely lift. She had come full circle, from humiliation to triumph, from being thrown out to being celebrated. But more than that, she had built a life she was proud of, raised daughters she adored, loved and been loved in return. As the celebration continued around them, Melissa noticed a woman standing at the edge of the crowd. Blonde hair, now streaked with gray. Older, thinner, wearing simple clothes instead of designer labels. Jennifer. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Jennifer raised her hand in a small wave, tentative, asking nothing. Melissa nodded in acknowledgement, a gesture that said, "I see you, I remember, I've moved on." Nothing more, nothing less. Jennifer smiled sadly, then turned and walked out of the hotel, leaving as quietly as she'd arrived. "Was that her?" Hope asked quietly. "The woman from the story?" "Yes." "Are you going to talk to her?" Melissa shook her head. "No, we have nothing left to say to each other. She's living her life, I'm living mine. That's enough. Junwoo squeezed her hand, and they turned back to the celebration, to the life they'd built, to the future they were creating. The past was present in memory, but not in power. It had shaped Melissa, but no longer defined her. Later that night, as they drove home through the city lights, Melissa reflected on the strange journey of forgiveness and growth. She had forgiven Jennifer, truly forgiven her, not for Jennifer's sake, but for her own peace. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation or trust or friendship. It just meant releasing the poison of that old hurt so it couldn't corrupt her present. Jennifer had become a different person, or so it seemed. But Melissa had too. They were strangers now, connected only by a shared history that meant different things to each of them. And that was okay. Not everything broken needed to be fixed. Sometimes things stayed broken, and you just built something new instead. "What are you thinking about?" Junwoo asked as they pulled into their driveway. "I'm thinking that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," Melissa said. "With exactly who I'm supposed to be with. And that everything I went through, all the pain and humiliation and struggle, it brought me here, to this life, to you, to our daughters, to myself." She looked at the home they'd built together, literally and figuratively. "Jennifer thought she was putting me in my place 20 years ago. She was, just not the place she intended. My place is here, with people who love and value me. My place is creating beauty and inclusion in the world. My place is showing my daughters that they belong anywhere they choose to be." Junwoo pulled her close, kissing her softly. "Your place is wherever you want it to be, because you're strong enough to claim it." And she was. After 20 years of growth and struggle and triumph, Melissa Lahey Park was exactly who she was meant to be. Not in spite of what Jennifer had done to her, but because of what she'd chosen to do in response. She had taken that moment of cruelty and transformed it into a catalyst for change, for growth, for becoming more fully herself. The girl who'd been thrown out of that hotel was gone, replaced by a woman who owned every space she entered. And that, Melissa thought as they walked inside to tuck their daughters into bed, was the best revenge of all. Not destruction or cruelty in return, but living so fully and completely that the old hurt became just a footnote in a much larger story. A story of resilience, of love, of a woman who refused to let anyone else define her worth, who built a life on her own terms, who transformed pain into purpose. Her story, hers alone, and it was beautiful,